I'm sure you read the title and immediately thought, ha, this guy's delusional. I understand that reaction. A while ago, I thought the same thing. With every supposed leak or article that would come out, I'd laugh and dismiss it. But no longer. Now, I am confident without a shadow of a doubt that we will get a Half-Life 3. It may not be for a couple of years, but I'm confident that by 2030, we will have Half-Life 3 in our hands. I started piecing this together after watching the Half-Life 2 20th anniversary documentary. Now, if you're a Half-Life 2 fan and you haven't seen this documentary, you need to watch it. It covers from the release of Half-Life 1 all the way through the episodes of Half-Life 2. They go through the engine, the order they made the games in, the physics. Just about every important thing that happened during Half-Life 2's development was talked about, and it is just fascinating. They even show test footage of what would have been Half-Life 2 Episode 3. We see a gun that would have created ice floors and walls. We also see a new enemy type that made of goo that ended up inspiring the goo in Portal 2. It's here that I started believing Half-Life 3 will exist. Take a listen to how Gabe Newell and the rest of the team describe Half-Life games.
But updates,
I think everybody that worked on Half-Life misses the working on that thing, but it's also hard not to be like, man, I've seen every way that you can fight an antlion or whatever, and so you want to get some space away from it until you can come back to it with fresh eyes.
It was easy to think about VR being a vehicle for Half-Life because that was a big technological innovation and kind of a core reason for that product's existence. And I think one of the things we have internally tended to attach to the Half-Life IP is innovation. Gameplay innovation is oftentimes enabled by a technological innovation. Clearly there was a ton in Half-Life 1 and 2. And so yeah, it's an interesting challenge moving forward to think about what that means for future Half-Life stuff, for sure.
the ending of Half-Life Alyx is somewhat a self-critical realization. So that was super satisfying, and all credit to the people who are specifically involved in that decision and those sets of designs. I think that Half-Life represents a tool we have and promises made to customers to capitalize on innovation and opportunities to build game experiences that haven't been involved previously. And I think that there are no shortage of those opportunities facing us as an industry right now.
Half-Life capitalizes on innovation and game experiences that haven't been evolved previously. The Half-Life games have revolutionized gaming. Half-Life 1 showed how immersive, interactive, and engaging a single-player shooter could be. Half-Life 2 brought real-life physics while heightening everything its predecessor did. A third game would have to innovate and push what gaming as a whole can accomplish. The team at Valve didn't believe this was possible at the time. Don't forget this was all on Source, a now 20-year-old game engine. Now, if only there was a new and improved engine for them to tinker with. Oh, that's right, Source 2, which released in 2015. Now you might be thinking, if Source 2 released so long ago, why didn't they already make a Half-Life 3? Well, in 2020, Jeff Keighley released an interactive storybook called Half-Life Alyx: Final Hours. It's $8 on Steam and has tons of cool art and behind-the-scenes stuff for Half-Life Alyx. This is all information from interviews Jeff did while at the Valve offices. We start off with a little tease saying Valve hoped fans would see Alyx as a next-generation Half-Life and be relieved the company was back in the Half-Life business. Valve was anticipating fans to speculate on what was next in line, an actual Half-Life 3. The company is obviously aware people want a third game. With the success of Alyx, the obvious question is, what's next for Valve? The hope, of course, is that Alyx isn't a one-off, but the start of a new era of single-player games from the larger, combined team at Valve. Armed with the now-finished Source 2 engine, and void of trepidations associated with returning to Half-Life, the team is energized to dive into what's next. The ice has been broken. Now we're hoping to smash through the ice completely, hints Phil Coe. We're not afraid of Half-Life anymore. Now that we've got a taste of making big stuff again, we want to keep going with that. Going from this to a new big thing, which will be even bigger, is pretty exciting. Privately, most of the team hopes that the next big thing will indeed be a full-scale Half-Life game not built for VR, but as a game accessible across all traditional gaming platforms. Sounds pretty exciting, and like we've got more Half-Life in the future. Though the next part does say some at Valve wonder if the company wants to take on such a large project with how big Alyx was. The mentality is there for Half-Life 3, but this was only part of the problem. As far back as 2013, groups of Valve developers began experimenting with potential game ideas built on the, at the time, in development Source 2 game engine. There was an RPG that at the time was called RPG being developed on. It would have been inspired by titles like Monster Hunter, Dark Souls, and The Elder Scrolls. There are explorations of a new Left 4 Dead 3. It would have been open world, set in Morocco, and would have had hundreds of zombies. It wasn't long before the team discovered the Source 2 engine was nowhere near ready to take on such ambitious projects. Beyond RPG and Left 4 Dead 3, there's another Source 2 project headed up by Dave Sparer. Sitting in a conference room at Valve, Sparer begins to talk about the genesis of that project, which began in 2013, in broad, general terms. We were working on this single-player game that would use proceduralism in concert with crafted experience to create something played in an open-ended way, he says. Robin Walker, who's also sitting in the room, overhears Sparer and begins to chuckle. "Dave, what was the name of your team again?" he asks with a smirk on his face. "Did your project have a name in its title?" Sparer lets out a breath, shakes his head, and looks at Walker, realizing what he's finally about to say. "Yes, that project was called Half-Life 3. Yes, that's right. Half-Life 3 was in development. The team has kept this game in mind for a long time and were stopped by technological limits and mental ones. But wait, there's more to say about what they had in mind. Sprayer and a small team spent more than a year prototyping a potential next step for the Half-Life franchise using Source 2. At first, the work involved porting more than 350 entities from Half-Life 2 over to the Source 2 engine, such as characters, objects, and other files. The core idea for Half-Life 3 was to rebirth Half-Life as a more replayable experience. It was sort of inspired by Left 4 Dead, which was always fun no matter how many times you played it. The game would find a building, seal up all the windows so there was only one way in, put a citizen or prisoner somewhere in the building, and then repopulate the building with enemies. You, as the player, would have to find a way to get into the building and locate the prisoner. The route was naturally different every time. Conceptually, these procedurally generated skirmishes would fit in between more crafted story moments that players had grown to love in traditional Half-Life games. Half-Life 3 suffered from a similar issue to Left 4 Dead 3, an unfinished Source engine. It was hard to build a first-person shooter on Source 2 at the time. There was no lighting solution, no save and restore, no visibility solution. A huge amount of tech was needed, and we honestly didn't get very far. The engine wasn't in a state for a full team to be on it, much less multiple game teams pulling it in different directions. By the end of 2014, Half-Life 3, Left 4 Dead 3, and RPG projects were all paused until the Source 2 engine became more stable. That's all I've got for the storybook, but pretty exciting stuff. In case you're still not convinced, let's do a quick recap. Valve needed the Source 2 engine to be fully functional to help innovate their games. Gabe himself believes Half-Life goes hand in hand with innovation. The team is now confident in their ability to make games due to Half-Life Alyx's response, and is more than willing to make more Half-Life games. Let's not forget Half-Life Alyx is on the Source 2 engine. That means there's heaps upon heaps of models for Half-Life already in-engine and ready to be used. Now let's say this wasn't enough for them to jump into Half-Life 3. Let's say they want to do more testing and working with the Source 2 engine to get more comfortable. I wonder where they could do that. Oh right, Counter-Strike 2. On March 22nd, 2023, Valve officially announced a Source 2 upgrade for Counter-Strike Global Offensive. They remade CSGO in Source 2 quite literally from the ground up, giving them plenty of experience that they already probably had with Alyx. On top of this, with the announcement, they showed off new upgrades such as responsive smokes. They also released Deadlock into early access. Deadlock uses the Source 2 engine. Last but not least, Valve has also given Gary Newman a version of Source 2 to make his spiritual successor to Gary's mod, Sandbox. We know they had to have given him the engine since Source 2 is yet to be released to the public. I bring these examples up to show that Source 2 is in a state for multiple people to be developing games and pushing new boundaries. Now, if none of this has turned you into a believer, I'm confident my last piece of evidence will. Mike Shapiro is the voice of the elusive G-Man. He absolutely loves his character, from going to voice recordings dressed as him to fan-canoning G-Man's lore. On December 30th, 2020, he released a tweet as G-Man. A few months later, Half-Life Alyx was released. His account then goes silent for 4 years, until December 31st, 2024, where he releases this video.
Another year already. Good to see and hear from so many of you. May the next quarter century deliver as many unexpected surprises as did the millenniums first. And again, time is fluid, like music. See you in the new year.
The only caption for this video is #Valve, #Half-Life, #G-Man, #2025. Ladies and gentlemen, Half-Life 3, or something equivalent, will happen. The stars are aligning, and Valve is ready to make it. Hell, I've even heard rumors that there's internal playtesting for Project HLX. I'm not entirely sure how true this is, but I did come across it while getting all my ducks in a row for the video. I hope I've made you a believer and reignited your hopes and dreams for Half-Life 3. I am confident we'll hear more about this franchise we all love.